Well, good morning to our May 11th, 2026 Indigenous Emergency Management information and news you can use. This is our daily briefing for, um, hazard and risk information across the country. Um, I'm trying I'm doing this one a little bit later in the day to see if it attracts a bit of a wider audience than 8:30 in the morning Mountain Standard Time. I'd like to kind of get feedback from everyone on whether we need to stick to the 8:30 a.m. or maybe if people want this a little bit later in the day as they ease into their workday. So if you have any feedback on kind of the timing for this, please let me know, but I'll try this out today and see how it goes. Because we want to make sure that we're reaching the most people possible as we go, through this process of updating everybody as they get used to our daily briefings. So I want to start off first by, of course, recognizing how we're able to do this. So we were lucky enough to get some sponsors for our daily lives and the TikTok work that we're doing in our training. All About Abatement is a First Nations owned abatement company specializing in hazardous material abatement, serving across Canada. Because we all know that hazardous building materials are not just a checkbox on a form. Older homes on reserve, school, band offices, older communities. A lot of them were built in eras when asbestos, lead, and mold were standard. And when those materials get disrupted during a renovation, a fire, a flood, or just plain aging infrastructure, that becomes a serious health risk. So All About Abatement specializes in hazardous material abatement, and being First Nations owned, Kyle, the owner, understands the importance of integrating, this work within the emergency management cycle. So I want to thank Kyle and his team for making sure that, these lives and some of our other training and services are kept to a minimum cost for Indigenous peoples as a sponsor. So they've been doing this for over 20 years, right? They're very knowledgeable, and Kyle is awesome to deal with. And the other sponsor that we have supporting our Indigenous Emergency Management, our TikTok lives, all of this work is Premier Fire and Flood Restoration. I want to give them a huge thank you as well for sponsoring our lives and our training for Indigenous Emergency Management, because emergency management in Indigenous communities is something that you live with year round. Wildfires every summer, pushing communities into evacuation. Spring flooding, taking out homes along rivers, sewer backup, frozen pipes, smoke damage, mold, all of that. These aren't events anymore. They are kind of our new normal as part of climate change. So Premier Fire and Flood is a 24/7 emergency restoration company with offices in Edmonton, Canada, Calgary, Whitecourt, and Saskatoon. They cover a huge stretch of treaty territories across Alberta and Saskatchewan, and their team handles fire damage, water damage, flood, and sewer backup. And I want to thank All About Abatement and Premier Flood and Fire for sponsoring these lives. And Kyle being in First Nations himself, doing abatement on reserve in community, making sure that mold, lead, it's really important that that all gets removed from homes within Canada. So thanks to our sponsors, All About Abatement and Premier Fire and Flood. So today, if you want this, if this briefing, you can get it at no cost on our application. Every morning, our situation reports are downloaded onto our app. It's free for anyone. and it highlights everything that's going on in terms of Canada. Right now, we're seeing the fire danger has increased significantly across Alberta and Saskatchewan, especially in the south. Things eased up a little bit on the weekend for British Columbia, but you can see where there's an extreme fire danger right now in those grasslands, prairies, southern parts of both of those provinces. And that was, an increase mainly due to the warm weather that we saw over the weekend, and that's only going to continue. So if we look at the fire weather index, you can see Saskatchewan in the south is extremely high right now. They are over 30 in the fire weather index. That is a indication of the intensity and size of flames that could occur within a conifer forest. So, if we're looking, when we did our last live just on Friday, if you take a look at the weather index and what it looked like just, a little bit over 48 hours ago, that's where we were sitting at. But you can see just over the weekend that it's shifted into Saskatchewan, and Alberta lightened up a little bit. So pretty good news there for Alberta, but you can still see that basically the entire province of BC and Alberta are now engulfed in a fire weather index of low to, getting into extreme. And we will see those trends develop further here as we get into the week. So let's just double check, what those temperatures are going to look like. You can see here today, we're already kind of in most of the prairies in that kind of, mid-teens. It is very windy right now in Alberta. I don't think we have any special, we'll just check to see if we have any special weather statements about the wind or anything like that. Let's look at live weather alerts. Yeah, the only live weather alerts are coming off kind of rainfall warnings in Quebec and down in Newfoundland, with, again, some continued frost advisories that we saw through the weekend. But in terms of the wind, you can see it is a pretty windy day going on right now in Alberta. And as we get into Tuesday, later through the week, we are going to see a little bit of cooling temperatures. And then by Thursday, the forecast, you can see that we're going to be down into the lower teens. But that wind is going to kind of, at least in the prairies, really wind up. So, yeah, some interesting weather coming into May. Dry, warm, windy weather. That is not going to be great for our fire danger. So if you do have any questions, please let me know. We've got all of the sources for our situation briefings listed on our application. It's free to join. You can see where we pull from news, Canadian Wildfire Information System, things like that. You can get a list of all the current fires that are going on with some reports across different communities. So Red Earth Cree Nation in Northeast Saskatchewan remains under a state of emergency with hundreds evacuated due to flooding. If we go over to our flood hub, you can see where, again, a lot of that flooding is still occurring in Alberta. Thank you for the likes there. We weren't going to peak. If we look at the peak flows, yeah, they're not going to peak until the 14th of May, it looks like, at least in the forecast. So we see a little bit of a dip, but it's going to keep climbing in the week through till Thursday. So rivers and creeks are expected to, increase right through the week, even into the 14th, 15th. We're not going to see any reprieve on the flooding side until close to the end of the week. Janvier, same as well. They're actually peaking right now, it looks like, and that'll hold steady for about 3 to 4 days. So, a lot of parts in the country, a lot of areas in the country are still seeing some warm, windy, dry weather, but that one part of Alberta is still seeing continued flooding. So, we want to stay vigilant and understand that, we're not totally just into fire season. Salute Quebec. Yep. Yeah, okay, you're in here, right? Kind of in that area. So based on the wildfire index, you're not really registering yet in terms of like a low fire weather index. Like you're not even on the board yet. So that's I mean that's good news, but it's probably still quite dry. Oh, we should see if with the drought monitor. Okay, look at that. Finally, the drought monitor has been updated. Yeah, so you guys are still abnormally dry, um, right up in that part of northern Quebec. So even though you don't have a ton of big boreal conifer forest, your lands are still quite dry. And actually, I thought this drought monitor might be a little bit worse. This is looking pretty good, but you can definitely see in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, um, what this is picking up is through March, we had all of that rainfall and that extra snow and some of those cooler temperatures. So the drought index for that month went down. But I think when they update this at early June, again, you're going to see this just kind of explode because this report is always a month behind. But if we want to kind of look at the current fire danger, this is where we're at right now. And if you have any questions or want me to go over anything, please let me know. Again, you can get this briefing on our app. You don't have to pay for it. It's available for anybody that wants to sign on and get a copy. Moose Factory downgraded its alert to level 5, meaning flooding is no longer imminent and the evacuation process has been paused. Kashkuan First Nation, they're still in full-scale evacuation due to flooding risk at Albany, and then already because of their water issues. So we're seeing, that evacuation from there. 40 long-term drinking water advisory still in effect, and the National Family and Survivor Circle Corps for Missing Murdered Indigenous Women Girls 2S+. Funding of $84,000 from the previous fiscal year expired at the end of March, and the government has still not provided any updates on what they're going to be doing about that. So, yeah, in terms of, the risks, let's go down to what we're seeing in community safety news. So yeah, this was at the news conference in April, Ottawa. Leaders of Indigenous women organizations called on the federal government to provide sustained funding to programs addressing missing, murdered Indigenous women. And the Ontario Provincial Police published its second edition of the Missing and Unsolved Murdered Indigenous Peoples report on Red Dress Day. So take a look at that if you haven't had a chance. I haven't looked at it, but it'd be interesting to see what they found. And we're still tracking the RCMP surveillance of Indigenous leaders and some APTN reporting. So you can get all of this with all the sources for the briefing here. And then on our resource library, you can get access to that and all of the data and all of the sites that we pull up for our reporting, and this update is available on that app. And as part of this too, with the app, we're actually implementing a token system where you can get paid if you help us develop the application and the Indigenous Emergency Management System. So I'm going to be rolling that out through a token system probably next week. So if you're an individual who has a stake in or a right in your community's emergency management, or you are in an emergency management career, and you want to get paid for helping develop this system, this application, you will be able to get paid for your contributions. If you are an employee of a community that uses the app for planning, assessment, and grant writing for the Emergency Management Assistance Program, your community can join as an economic development opportunity and partner with us, so they also get a return on with revenue for contributions to the application. So that's an exciting piece that we're building into this to make it a true cooperative, a true community-driven application built in Canada, hosted in Canada, run and informed by Indigenous peoples. And so lots of news to come out around that. And you can also access all of our training and resources through the app. If you're looking for basic emergency management training, incident command system training, whatever it is, emergency operations center, team building, whatever training you need for emergency management, it's Indigenous formed and built for Indigenous peoples. So in terms of fire starts, not a lot popping up here. We still have a number of fires going on in BC and Alberta, which seem to be kind of the hotbed. Manitoba, Ontario, Atlantic Canada, not a whole lot of activity, but we're still seeing some of those out of control fires that started yesterday. This one just northwest of Kamloops, 37.5 hectares. Small one started up today in BC. This one May 8th, out of control, 1 hectare. So Alberta out of control, 100 hectares. Yeah, so you can kind of see here, nothing of significance in and around too many populated areas. So, I mean, that's great news given what the fire weather index is looking like as of today. But as we know, this is gonna increase and shuffle around as we get into the warmer summer that's coming up. We're only at May 11th, right? We still have May long weekend to go through, and we know in Canada, May long weekend, at least in the prairies, is very, very cold and windy. But you can already see too, Atlantic Canada fully engulfed, mostly in a low fire weather index, fire danger. And there, you're just going to kind of see that area balloon up, I think, into the high extreme fire weather index as we move along into the summer. So as we look at the weather and the temperatures here for the week, let's see, the forecast goes out to about Saturday, but cooling off for a lot of Canada as we get in. See, that's the May long weekend, I told you. But they're forecasting for the May long weekend, typical Canadian May long weekend weather. Nice and low, 8-9 degrees, a little warmer in the south Alberta, a little warmer in southern Ontario and into Atlantic Canada, but for the most part, typical May long weekend for Canada if you're used to living in the north. What else do we got here from the daily sit rep in case I missed anything? Shoal Lake, 185 members of Shoal Lake Cree Nation in Saskatoon evacuated. So yeah, you can get all this, and we've got all these listed here. Good evening from the high Arctic. Evening? It's only 11 o'clock. Where in the high Arctic are you? Don't need to see that. I gotta go back to my window here. Where is it? I turned it off on you. Yeah, the high Arctic is getting warm. The sea ice is projected. Oh, Pond Inlet. Oh yeah, you're a couple hours, right? Yeah, Pond Inlet. I think you're in kind of in this area. Yeah, sea ice is projected to not be forming in the summers by 2050. So a little bit earlier in the morning. Usually we do this at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time to kind of get everybody ready for the day. But if it makes sense for us to kind of move up a couple hours, maybe to doing this at 10 a.m. or 10:30 Mountain Standard Time. I'd like to get people's feedback on that, because we want to try and reach as many people as possible. It would mean that our recordings don't get onto our YouTube and our homepage until a little bit later, but I'm willing to kind of do some audience testing to see when the best time is for these lives, because we want to make them as useful and relevant as possible. So if you have any feedback on that, like, please definitely let me know. It would be good to know if this is better to do at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, or if it's better to do a little bit later in the day. But whatever the case is, we can't we can only make this possible through our sponsors. So we are being sponsored by a First Nations owned company to do this, and a Canadian owned company that is helping us maintain these lives and keeping our our work at a lower cost, right? And I always like to recognize them, because they're doing amazing work in Indigenous communities. And Premier Fire and Flood and Restoration, they're a sponsor of ours. They do a lot of work across so many treaty territories in Alberta, Saskatchewan, but they are Canada-wide. And they manage frozen pipe, smoke damage, mold after a water leak, where nobody came in time, like Premier Flood and Fire's 24/7 emergency restoration. They are IICRC certified, CORE certified, Better Business Bureau accredited, and they work directly with insurance companies and First Nations across Canada. And for emergency managers, housing departments, and anyone in a leadership role thinking about who you have to speed dial before the next fire season or freshet or flood, this is the kind of support you want. And First Nations owned All About Abatement. They are also sponsoring these lives and our Indigenous Emergency Management training, because they know the value in making sure that asbestos, lead, and mold are removed from homes and structures, whether it's on reserve or off reserve. Kyle is First Nations from BC. So if you're a chief and council member, a housing manager, an emergency coordinator, even a homeowner dealing with a renovation or post-disaster cleanup, and you're worried about what's behind the walls, especially if it's asbestos, lead, or mold, Kyle at All About Abatement, which is First Nations owned, can help you out. And they are sponsoring, I'm going to put his video back up there because I didn't pause it for poor Kyle, but Kyle is helping us to deliver this for Indigenous communities across Canada. So we're super grateful to their support in making this all possible. So yeah, as we get along in the season here, we're going to be tracking all of these areas within our briefings daily. And whether we continue to do them at 8:30 a.m. or move them up to about this time in the day, you all let me know. You can DM us through Hazardscape, our TikTok. You can contact us through email, or you can join in the app and submit your feedback. Because as I said earlier, you will be able to get paid through this app for your contributions. You will get to earn cash for your contributions on our app as we develop kind of this cooperative Indigenous emergency management community across Canada. And that's all to help, improve emergency management across the country. And, you can get credentialed in emergency management as well. If you want to show the work that you've done in disaster and emergency management, either in your community or as an individual volunteer, you can get credentialed through us to show the work and the skills that you've gained and the results that you've gotten in your community. And it's not just about community emergency management. We're looking at, in our assessments, we incorporate substance abuse, organized crime risks, murdered, missing Indigenous women, girls, 2+S. All of those are community risks, and our training addresses all of that. So building up this community is going to be really, really important. Other tools that we pull in, this is Prairie WX, and they do some live mapping every day across the country. We rely on this one as well for some, just a different view of the data and information that we pull. And they are out of the Prairie's Prediction Center. So, you know, this is a really good one if you're kind of looking for just some real-time wind, weather information. They have outlook maps that kind of concentrate across the country in different regions, right? So very, very helpful, especially if you're in a specific region of the country and you kind of want to look at mapping that is specific to your area. Like you can see here, weather threat is minor up in that northern part of Ontario. This was created today. And yeah, that's it's a good open source information site. You can even get it up in the Arctic. They do special weather statements. These are all minor right now, but if they're ever at an extreme high or moderate, you'll get that information and data here. And they also have a really good, kind of really simplified, just a news reporting dashboard of, you know, updates through a feed. So if you're looking for, you know, Winnipeg and you want to look at northern Manitoba, you can pull up your region and get that data here as a text bulletin. And then they've got point forecasts. So you can kind of zoom in to maybe your area to take a look at weather, wind, stuff like that. So, but if you like the more general user interface, we use windy.com. And if you're even looking for fire smoke progression and where things are at, there's not really enough going on right now, but there is a couple fires being flagged here in Manitoba that are producing a bit of smoke, and you can kind of see where, you know, that progression through the day. It's not a lot, but when it gets a lot more active coming out of the May long weekend, you know, we'll be able to pull this and kind of see what the air quality is like around the country. You can also pull air quality on here at windy.com. We use that one just because it's kind of a neat, it's got a good user interface. Let's look at snow depth, thunderstorms, rain, precipitation. Where is it? I know they have a air quality one. There we go. So there's air quality index across the country. Green is good. Yellow is moderate. So yeah, whatever is going on kind of in this area around Saskatchewan, Manitoba, moderate. Not anything that's looking too unhealthy or hazardous as per this one. Mostly probably because it is such a windy day and there's not a lot of fires right now. So yeah, just some different data for everybody to kind of look at and get a sense of. As we get into the summertime, I will pull up some heat maps for Canada that will show, you know, where the high, you know, intense heat is coming from urban areas. But for now, we'll stick to this. There's some rain, thunder potential for Canada. Let's go to today. not too bad. We're looking, this one's kind of nice because if there is lightning strikes, it'll provide lightning strike data. So you can kind of watch in real time what's being tracked in terms of lightning. And it's kind of helpful for that because if you're kind of combining that with, you know, fire danger. So if you look here in southern Saskatchewan, Alberta, and you start noticing significant lightning strikes in those areas, you can just put two and two together and you'll kind of get the sense of how that risk increases for fire and fire starts. And you can even start to map out, you know, when you're looking at high fire weather index, lightning strikes, and then you pull in real-time fire start data, you can start to see things unfolding very, very quickly in real time in your community. So very helpful if you're a community emergency manager or even child and family services. Any emergency management role, whether it's preparedness, mitigation, response, or recovery in a First Nations, Métis, or Inuit community, there is a lot of data and tools out there for you to monitor the natural hazards in your community and the other risks too, like air quality, organized crime, substance abuse. We track all of that through so many different open source models, including, like I was showing earlier, flooding, which, you know, the real hotspots here are kind of in Quebec, or sorry, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Oh yeah, if we're looking here, we're not even going to see peak flows until Friday for flooding in this part of Saskatchewan. But already in Alberta, we're going to see some peak flows starting up here Thursday, Friday. So if you are in those areas, keep an eye out. Be careful around rivers, floods, or rivers and creeks, areas like that. And if you are looking at mapping out your community risks, we have every risk you could think of, every hazard you could think of on our app. It's free to join. You can get access to all of our daily sit reps, all of our resources. But if you are actually responsible for measuring hazard risk vulnerability in your community, you can go through here and kind of find all different ones and run through the assessment for all of those risks if you're responsible for that in a community or an organization. And the nice thing about this is it all feeds into our emergency plans. If you're responsible for safety or emergency response planning in your community or organization, you have a full access to all of our templates, all of our annexes for all of these different hazards. You can write up a complete plan and get to a complete emergency program here in as little as 3 to 4 months. So if, and we're working with child and family services, we work with education, health, public works, fire services, any department on a Métis, in a Métis community, Inuit community, First Nation, this is all applicable. And if you're not even formally in emergency management, if you're just an employee of a First Nation, Métis community, or an Inuit community, even as a volunteer or a paid staff member, you have a role in emergency management. And we're going to be updating our resource library with a massive Wikipedia type page for Indigenous emergency management resources. So that's fine. If you don't live on reserve, it's on and off reserve. If you live off reserve, you are in the emergency management system wherever you live, right? Either as a volunteer, a homeowner, a citizen, whatever it is, you have a role in emergency management at the individual, family, and community level. And this is all applicable. All of the learning tools and our knowledge hub is all applicable. Okay, this knowledge hub is going to populate in our next build, and it's going to be filled with articles that you can use for training. Black mold. Okay, well, are you renting it from like a landlord, or is it your home, or is it an apartment? Who won't you own it? And are you like, do you need a more detailed kind of inspection on it? Are you looking for resources on how to deal with it the best way possible? Let me know if you are, because I can get you some access. Okay. Where are you? Do you want to DM me at the Hazardscape TikTok? You tried to go through Jordan's principle. Okay, yeah. Why don't you send me a DM, a direct message at the Hazardscape TikTok, or I'll put my email. I can put the Hazardscape email. Yeah, you can email there too. We also, this one's online that we've got right now. It's being built for Indigenous peoples. Just let me pull. I don't want to make sure when I log in, I don't want it to go to my admin dashboard. Just a sec. This one I'll show you. It might be helpful in your case. It would be up to you. But we have a My Home application where you can actually track your home repairs and print off reports to manage it. Let me get it straightened out there. So, hey, Steak Dad, thanks for coming on. This just is more of a tool. It's not going to guarantee you funding, but it will help you in the project management of dealing with your home repairs. Because, like, let's say, for example, you've got, in the living room, you've got mold and it's urgent, right? And it's been going on for 3 months and you need it by next week, and you want to flag it as a Jordan's Principle issue. You can download a report, which is just really kind of like an organized way to submit these and keep track, right? I just want to go to my dashboard. Yeah, you don't see anything. So you get a dashboard here of all of the reports that you create and the tracking you do. So whether it's for on reserve housing or off reserve for insurance, if you have home insurance, whatever it is. I don't have proper internet right now, so I can only use TikTok and message on Messenger. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Just send me a DM and I can at least get you some help and some expertise through our connections, First Nations owned abatement company, all about abatement. They can at least have a discussion with you and even maybe kind of understand what's going on and help guide you through it a little bit, or at least figure something out. And that's kind of what they're there for. And that's why we've also, we've also from the contractor did the inspection. Okay. Was the contractor like an actual abatement expert, or, because here's the question I ask, right? Like, if they're just a general contractor, they may, like, I always ask them if they are qualified and certified to do mold abatement, or anything like that, because what you want is you definitely want somebody who has expertise in it, because they tend to have different solutions, and they know the regulations and the policies, and they can, I think, do a little bit better of an assessment than what you might call like a home inspector or a general contractor, right? And doing it with an abatement company also means that they make sure to quarantine your home so it doesn't spread. I've seen general contractors remove asbestos and mold without quarantining the rest of the home and doing proper decontamination. And that doesn't serve anybody, because now you're just spreading the mold spores throughout the house. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's awful. I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, DM me and we'll get you. I'll get you some additional information there. But if you are looking for like home inventory, this is especially good for people if you're worried about evacuations, um, and you're concerned with loss and damage after a wildfire. You can go in here and do a full um, inventory of your entire home. So if there is financial assistance available, okay, thanks. I'll check the DM after this. If there is a claim to be made through Indigenous Services Canada for emergency assistance, financial assistance, or even if the nation has some insurance, then you've got a complete list of all of your personal items. And we've also included cultural items. So you can check off if you've got drums and things like that, traditional tools, art, hunting equipment, trapping equipment. You want to catalog all of this, because I've seen communities get evacuated not thinking that it was going to be a big risk that their house get burned down, and then they lose everything. And now they're just trying to go through a mental record of everything they own. And you can do this, do it, take a couple of weeks, do it piece by piece, little by little. But it is, and then you can print it off in Excel or a PDF. And then you've also got a record of it on your phone forever in case you are an evacuation center. And I'll put the link here in the chat. myhome.hazardscape.com. Yep, there is. Check it out. We've got some people testing it right now, and some on reserve home inspectors are looking at it. But even if you did the repair request report and sent that into a contractor or a restoration company or an abatement company, at least then they have a very general overview of what's going on with the home, and that'll save you a little bit of time and money if they have to come and do something, because you've already given them a bit of an idea and they can come a bit more prepared. So yeah, the home inventory, and you can do it as the homeowner or as an individual adult caregiver or parent living in the home. And you can add as many people as you want, even elders, if you've got to do it for them, youth, children, whatever you like. So very, very helpful there, if you're looking to it. Yeah, if you have 3 sons living with you, you can add them all, right? You can add them all in there, and you can track their video games, their PlayStations, all their clothing. We've made it really accessible. So if you do have to go add in people and you need to put in like 5 jackets at an estimated value of like $1,200, it's in there. Tops, shirts, pants, dresses, whatever it is. Track your personal items, because I've worked with thousands of Indigenous peoples who have had total or significant loss of their homes, and they've had to go through this process in an evacuation welcome center applying for financial assistance, and they forget stuff, and then they got to come back and add it on 3 months later, and you know, it just makes the financial assistance process faster if you can hand this all off. Your application will go that much more quicker, especially as we're getting into, you know, fire season and looking at more evacuations, because we know First Nations are overly represented in evacuations, and you know, the harm that comes out of Canada's underfunding of Indigenous communities and planning and preparedness. So yeah, take a look at all that. um can If you have feedback, let me know on the time of this. You know, during the day, does 8:30 Mountain Standard Time work, or is it better to do it a little bit later in the morning for people? I'd like to hear from, you know, viewers on that, either in the pre-recorded, you can add that in our comments, DM us or email us. And before I sign off for the day, I'll just give out, you know, one more shout out to the sponsors that are making this possible. First Nations owned All About Abatement. Kyle at All About Abatement is First Nations. He is making sure that we can deliver this with our low cost to free training for Indigenous communities. And, you know, first Premier Fire and Flood, they, you know, they also do like vandalism, graffiti removal, and they have a response trailer stage. So if a community needs immediate restoration equipment, they've got like a 53-foot trailer stage ready to deploy. And that's very unique in Canada. A lot of restoration companies going on reserve are from the United States. And for Native art, how do they value that? Oh, that's a really great question. So two things I'll say about that. And actually, while I got this up, Darcy at Premier, because of their work on reserve, they've got a system for preserving Native art and leather and pelts and drums. They've got a system where they can put all of that into a state. It's a bit of freezing, and it stops the mold growth. It stops the contamination of the wildfire smoke embedding into the soft goods. So I'll just throw that off the top. But in terms of how do they value it, it's up to Indigenous Services Canada, and that's done through a conversation. So definitely, when you're doing your home inventory, take pictures. Take pictures of everything as you're going through it. And if you put on here like beadwork, you know, handed down from XXX, it was, you know, put made in, you know, 1940, right? At this location. Like, put as much detail in there and put in a value of what you think. Do a quick, I just kind of, with these items, if you don't get like an actual, if you need an appraiser, we have access to appraisers. But if you don't want to do, if you want to do that appraisal just through kind of like ask around, do some Google searches. You know, like if beadwork today, if a medallion today costs $600, and you know, this one is from like, you know, 80 years ago, done by your great 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 grandparent, like, I would just, I don't know, $3,000. I don't know, but yeah, take pictures, document everything you can, especially if you have insurance, because they will value it. And talk to elders, talk to anybody in your community that might have an idea. Indigenous Services Canada, they can provide financial assistance for some ceremonial items, especially medicines, hunting, trapping equipment. Okay, especially if it contributes to like the quality of your life, benefits your life. Like there's ways to get some of that items financially recuperated through Emergency Management Assistance Program. So document, document, document. And I'll put some appraisal resources on here too about, you know, some of the things people can do. Gizio paintings. Okay, Yeah, great. Take pictures. Catalog, catalog, catalog. That's the best you can do. Okay, everyone, that's it for today. I will be back tomorrow with our next daily situation brief. If you missed this one or didn't catch it all, it is going to be, thanks, Lisa, for your engagement. I'll get back to you later. This is recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube and our hazardscape.com homepage with the briefing materials. So if you ever miss a briefing, you can catch us on the recordings. All right, everyone, take care. See you tomorrow. Know your hazardscape and stay prepared. Masicho.